Many people have been a fan of From Software's Dark Souls series because of its difficulty. The moment it's brought up to any new player, difficulty is no doubt one of the first things they've mentioned, although with Elden Ring it looks like the director is looking to change all of that. He initially started by talking how he just doesn't want new players to stress about the difficulty, and how if the difficulty had put you off the previous games, then this might be the game for you. There's a lot of talk about how the players need to have a stress-free gaming experience, how horses provide a stress-free method of travel across the long distances that players need to travel, and how the challenge of travel was to place enemies in a way that would keep players interested, but still provide them a low-stress experience. Now, hey, call me crazy, but when I think of Dark Souls, low-stress environment isn't exactly the top of my mind, but apparently, now we've got to make the game for everybody. And of course, in a series where difficulty is in fact one of the main selling points for its target audience, going after an entirely new audience that just wants a far simpler experience doesn't seem to be the way to me. Just adding random games journalist modes just doesn't seem like it's going to get you that many new people. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the game is exactly easier in its own right. He does talk about how the open world has provided other alternative methods of simultaneously giving players the option of making the game easier, while also having a more difficult option available if you actually want the hardcore route, in the fact that if you find a difficult area, you can actually just leave it, go somewhere else, level up, get better gear, and come back to it, and then make that game easier relative to your actual skill level than it would have been originally. So I can understand that he's simultaneously trying to appease both crowds. I'm just not sure if that's exactly what the Dark Souls games are about, or whether the Dark Souls fans will actually be too happy with that. I do think it's possible in an open world to create paths which are both easier and more difficult depending on how much of the rest of the game you've actually completed at that time and what gear you have on you. But when the developer himself is talking about how he wants to make more players reach the end of the game rather than actually maintain the soul of the game itself and what it's renowned for across gamers, it seems like a bit of a warning sign to me. But I do think that the open world nature of it allows it to walk a tightrope that could appease both sides as long as they actually manage to nail it, because that is one line that it would be very easy to fall off on. So this is going to be very interesting on February the 25th to see the reaction to this game and see how the reaction is after a couple of weeks once all the novelty's worn off. So I'm going to be paying very close attention to the reaction to this one. Respawn Entertainment has announced that they're going to be making 3 new Star Wars games, the first of which is pretty predictable, which is going to be a sequel to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. But the 2 more interesting ones to me are the products that we don't actually know about. The first is a first-person shooter led by Peter Hirschman. Now, Peter Hirschman oversaw games such as The Force Unleashed and the original Battlefront games during his time at LucasArts. And he's been involved in Medal of Honor Above and Beyond. And honestly, to me, I think this could go either way. Battlefront itself, well, a lot of people now have said that the game are vastly improved. They were launched with disastrous either monetization strategies or just were games that didn't really hook the population long enough in order to maintain its player base. But overall, I just want a good Star Wars first-person shooter. I'd love that. I don't even care whether it's single-player or multiplayer at this point, although if they go for some kind of BR angle, I will just laugh at them and roll my eyes. Now, I've always been interested more in the Star Wars games than the movies, just because I think the universe provides a great sandbox for actually building creative games in it. So despite EA's poor history with first-person shooters, I'll always remain hopeful that at least this time maybe we'll get something good in the long term. I think the opportunity is definitely there. It's just hope that this time they actually focus on making something good rather than something that scrapes out as many pennies from people's pockets as possible. But it's the third game that I'm interested in the most, made by a new studio, Bit Reactor, which has developers from the XCOM series in it. I'm a huge fan of any turn-based game, and XCOM was a great in itself. In fact, you could probably take XCOM, just put a Star Wars skin over it, and I would still get a lot of entertainment out of that game. But as this is a new studio, I'm hoping they go a bit further than this. I'd like them to stay at what they're good at, making turn-based strategy games, because I think that's where their strengths lay. But at the same time, I don't think they will be very happy if people just accuse them of cloning their own properties. And honestly, I hope they're going to be a bit more original than that. We've had real-time strategies before, like Star Wars Battlegrounds, which is kind of just an AoE spin-off, let's face it. And I think that the environment could provide a lot of opportunity for creativity for the XCOM developers. So this is a game that's going to stay on my radar. I'm hoping as a new developer, they won't feel the need to get stuck in the same rut that XCOM has kind of fallen into at the moment, and will actually try something new and original. As much as I love Warzone, one of its problems that it's had repeatedly is that of hackers, and it's not just aimbot or wall hack, no, now we've got Harry Potter flying cars. This really has to be seen to be believed, but luckily Tim the Tatman has got us a great clip of it. When one of his hackers in his games actually was flying around his head, he wanted a journey, and it led to this great clip.
You're a wizard, Harry. Keep going. Bro, if you're watching, come pick me up. I want to ride.
Go.
Harry, Ronald Weasley! Oh my god. Okay, we're going to the moon, boys. Let's go! Honestly, a lot of you are probably like, wow, this is shambles. Honestly, I agree, and I kind of love it. Okay. What is happening? Ow, dude. Okay, get me out of here. Uber, take me somewhere. No! Dude! Wait, he's dropping me out of the air, man! Are you serious? It looks like he's weighing it down here.
It's almost like the plane. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have liftoff.
According to the clip, the cars can fly because of the plane integration, something that I don't think should even be in a BR in the first place. I don't know why we've got planes in a BR, but this is just another nail in the coffin of Warzone. Everything happens that actually hurts its reputation, and honestly, I think if it wasn't the streamers that were such a big fan of the game, then the game would have far, far less players than it does at the moment. And I'm a big fan of Warzone itself, a big fan of Rebirth at least, but I can't help thinking when I see clips like this that the player numbers may well be getting supported just by the hype that having big streamers playing your games actually brings. And while hackers are annoying to anybody, I can imagine it's doubly annoying to a streamer when you actually have to continue playing the game and can't just log off. So I can understand why, hey, if something's a fun bug like this and it's not necessarily harming anyone, why you'd want to take advantage and get as much fun as possible for it, especially when it gets you the views. So while obviously a flying car isn't exactly the worst cheat in the world, it's just funny to watch, and every time I look at it, I laugh. But the sheer fact that this is possible on the Warzone engine and isn't even detected by the anti-cheat really just shreds its reputation as an anti-cheat at all. If you can't detect a flying car, how on earth do you expect the players to believe you're ever going to detect an aimbot or a wall hack? You don't get much more obvious than this. So while I still have a great time in Rebirth, we are reaching a point where you're like, okay, the moment this gets any kind of competition, it's going to be in trouble, because there really isn't another sort of action-based BR that even tries to take on Warzone at the moment, and honestly, the longer this goes on, the more I wish there was. Around the same time, Ubisoft and Stalker 2 announced that they were going to be adding NFTs into their games, and obviously the backlash was severe. Now, Stalker 2 backtracked and said, okay, you don't like it, we're going to take it out of our games, and you're never going to see them again, we're sorry. But Ubisoft, they've just decided to double down and blame the gamers that they just don't understand how good all of this stuff is. But quite frankly, if you're pitching something to a group and that group says they doesn't like it, it's far more likely that they don't like it because your idea doesn't appeal to them rather than they didn't understand it. But if they don't understand it, then the fault still lies with the person pitching, not the person on the other side. Because while you could always argue that a few people may not be able to grasp a concept, if everybody doesn't like it, the problem doesn't lie with them, it definitely lies with you. But Ubisoft's implementation of NFTs is easily the worst I think is possible to be made. This wasn't something creative or original, something that no one had seen before. This was just helmets with numbers on. This wasn't complicated or difficult to understand. There was nothing to understand. Quite frankly, if you can't understand a helmet with a number on it, then you probably can't even work out how to turn a computer on, let alone how to play the game in the first place. But they went on and said, we see the ecosystem for what a game can be and make it much, much bigger than what a game is today in terms of value creation for everybody. But the issue is, obviously, that didn't exist. That wasn't what you were pitching them. You were pitching them helmets with numbers on, not some big, massive world where they might own the game, own their accounts, own everything in them and be able to pass that and trade them on to other players. That doesn't exist yet. So the fact that Ubisoft thought that anyone was supposed to swallow this big, grand grand idea when that's not even what you were trying to pitch them in the first place is farcical, and the entire argument seems to me more like some kind of ad hoc rationalization that you've come up with in a PR meeting after you got all the backlash, and you decided that you weren't going to back down, you were going to double down. But if you thought that NFTs were going anywhere, then you are sorely mistaken, as even the YouTube CEO has said that NFTs and crypto present a previously unimaginable opportunity. So this is definitely something we're going to be seeing everywhere, not just on YouTube, not just from Ubisoft, but in so many more games. So if you don't like them, you're going to want to be making your voice heard, and you're going to have to be saying it a lot in the coming years, because like loot boxes, whether we want them or not, you're going to see more and more people adding this into almost every game. Elgato has slowly been taking over the gaming and content creator space with various different items, from microphones to stream decks to lights, green screens, and everything else. But this is a bit of a weird one, as now Elgato has come out with a stream deck pedal. Many people have wanted extra buttons on their controllers or their mouse, but now you can get them for your feet, although these 3 buttons for your feet will cost you a whopping £80 or $90 just for the privilege. And this device is being pitched for everything from gaming to content creation to helping you edit. Whether you use it as an extra push-to-talk button, strafe, turn team chat on or off, or any other of various different keybinds or games, or just to help speed up editing, it does actually have a wide variety of uses. And to be honest, even at the price, I kind of like it. The only thing holding me back is some of the weird positions I get in with that game. I'm just not sure how accessible it would be for a lot of the time that I'm actually doing it. But apart from that, I think extra buttons are always useful, and I can definitely see the appeal of this one. That's the thing with Elgato. A lot of their products, when they release them, you're like, okay, that's weird. And then the more you think about it, I'm like, actually, why has no one thought of this before? And this is really it. It's just that, like most of Elgato's stuff, I do think at £80, it seems at a very high cost, especially as this is just a plastic foot pedal. But despite that, I think this is useful and unique enough that I think it'll sell very, very well. Halo Infinite has been Halo's biggest launch in history, hitting 20 million players. However, it wasn't a launch without problems, and Big Battle has been the one which has definitely shown that to be the case, in the fact that it's been 3 months and it still doesn't work. But now it's been fixed. Maybe. You see, we've seen all this before. They came out with a patch, said it was fixed, say they fixed it internally, and then when they released it to the public, no, it's still broken. And now they're saying the exact same thing again. On February the 3rd, at the earliest, is when you can expect the current patch, and while it fixes it on their internal servers, nobody knows what it's going to be like when it goes live. At the moment, it's being held back through certification, so while they hope that February the 3rd might be its first launch, it could actually be delayed depending on what happens through the certification process. But if you are one of the fans of Big Battle, there may be hope in sight. Although it's been 3 months, so if you're still around, then I praise you just for your patience. Blizzard announced that it's been working on a new survival game. Or at least they were trying to, because this has been a game that's been in development for almost 5 years, and it still doesn't even have a title. No, they're still hiring for developers on it and claim the game is in at an early stage. Blizzard is a company which hasn't released a game since 2016. And one thing we can learn from that is Blizzard really needs someone that can actually rope their developers in, and get them on target to actually start releasing games. It's no use working on games if you never release them. Overwatch 2 is the perfect example of this. I think everyone expected it to be released at least a year ago, and nope, still waiting for any news. But news is apparently on the way, because the announcement of a new Blizzard game when they haven't released anything in so long obviously caused some fans to question, what exactly have you been doing all of this time? But Mike Ybarra came to Twitter to try and calm the flames somewhat by saying Blizzard is a big studio and we have talented and growing teams supporting live games as well. Over the coming weeks, you'll be hearing more from the Warcraft and Overwatch, with Diablo to follow. Stay tuned. So hopefully, at some point in the future, we're actually going to find out about the games, because it's just been radio silent so far. Let's face it, largely probably because they just had a bad reputation, and announcing anything at that time would have done more harm than good. But as that's kind of calmed down now, at the very least, we seem to be getting more back into the actual games, which, let's face it, it's what I care about, and I'm assuming that's what everyone else cares about as well. I want my game developers to be making games. That's what I want them to focus on. And so when you get to a point where you're like, no, we're a big studio and we've got loads of developers, and you haven't released a game in over 5 years, there comes a point where I think it's reasonable to question, What kind of work have you been doing? And hopefully, we'll get an answer to that soon. But now, let me know what you thought of the topics down in the description below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe for more videos like this in the future. And for now, that's it from me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.